The over-the-top, under-the-radar, end-of-year Christmas special is happening. It's a live event. It's the 11th of December at the Bernie Grant Arts Centre, Tottenham.
Tickets start from £8. We have Labour MP Belle Ribeiro Addy joining us. Don't miss out. Hi, I'm Gary Young.
And I'm Carys the Foco.
Every week, Carys and I will be talking about those stories in the news that are overreported and the ones that are going completely under the radar and not talked about enough.
This is Over the Top, Under the Radar. This week's episode is supported by Faber.
So, Carys, how you doing?
Good. I've been seeing a lot of films. We're in Oscar season or like pre-Oscar season, so I've been hitting the cinema.
Have you seen anything good?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, first thing, you got to watch Gladiator. Denzel Washington is just, he's chef's kiss, Gary. He's hamming it up, wearing these giant sort of brocadey costumes. He's got gold hoop earrings. It's excellent. So we'd recommend Gladiator. And then Anura, which is a bit more indie. Son of a Russian oligarch, a young woman who's an exotic dancer. Very good, very fun, bit of a caper. Yeah, no, I've been seeing films. What have you been up to?
My film input has been Paddington 2, which I don't really rate.
It's 3. We're on the third one now.
Oh, so that's right. Sorry, it's Paddington in Peru. So
it's a trilogy now, isn't it, Paddington? Like all the best franchises.
Yeah. They keep getting worse. I think Paddington in Peru is not... I don't recommend it. I saw Wicked.
Is it good?
Yeah, I didn't really get it. I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't get it. I had to get my 11-year-old to explain it to me afterwards. I was like, so why did this happen? You know, I love The Wizard of Oz, so prequels, sequels, anything to do with The Wizard of Oz is I'm up for.
You love The Wizard of Oz. Interesting.
Yeah, nostalgia, I guess.
I do know that you love Grease.
No, Grease is the best film that was ever made. Grease and Love Jones, which is now on Amazon. Love Jones is the most wonderful, brilliant film about Black bohemian life in Chicago, but it's fun.
Well, if you're going to recommend something on Amazon, I'm going to recommend something on Amazon. Kneecap is on. You can stream it now. It's about like an Irish language rap trio. It's so funny. It's really sweary, and it's got Michael Fassbender in a really, really good sort of cameo role, and it's like political, really good. So okay, that and Love Jones if you own
Love
Amazon.
Jones, which I think came out in like 1997, 98. Just trust me on this one. It's a beautiful.
I'll check it out.
Film, and
it's
I
cold.
found
No
it
one
very
to be outside.
Yeah, I found it very aspirin when I watched it, and I would have been I was in my late 20s. I was young once. Talking of which, somebody got up and gave me their seat on the tube, which
I saw you tweeted that.
Incredibly polite. Obviously, I appreciate the gesture, but like, I got used to being called uncle randomly in the show. I was kind of, I lent into that. When people get up, it's not just that you must look old. It's that you must look frail, I don't fucking know. I don't know.
Well, okay, there's a few things. So first of all, I mean, I feel like being called uncle is a sign of respect. I encourage my kind of nieces and nephews and godchildren to call me Auntie Carys. And for those not familiar, it's an age-related sign of respect. So uncle, auntie, like, come on, come at it. Uncle Gary, Auntie Carys. We want that respect energy. Being offered a seat, I mean, might not mean did you have a lot of bags? More importantly, did you have the beanie on? Because the beanie will keep you looking young.
No, I did have the beanie. I thought the beanie was taking years off, but maybe he was just piling them on. I don't know. It was cruel.
Did you look tired? Did you have a lot of shopping bags?
No. Just, I was going regular.
Was the person young that offered it to you? Was it like a little teenager or something?
No, she would have been in her 20s, 20-something-year-old white lady. It was all above board. See, and the thing about uncle and auntie, I think, like, I get it I wouldn't insist on it that is quite interesting auntie energy that you've got, that you're like, this is what you're going to call me.
Yeah, I'm my auntie here. I love it.
When random people in the street call you uncle, that is different. I'm all right with it because I'm like, I'm older, but they don't know how much older Or maybe they do. Maybe they do.
Sometimes culturally it's just like a respect thing, but no, I hear you. I mean, I can top that though, because I have been offered a seat on the tube because someone thought I was pregnant.
Oh,
that was a bad one. I never wore that jumper again. Yeah, she was like offering me and I was like, I'm fine. And then she gestured to my stomach and I was like, I'm not pregnant, in quite a shitty way. I was just like, I was honestly quite mortifying. And she was also mortified. So then it was just, it made for an awkward journey. And obviously I was fuming.
You got to be sure for that one.
It's a punchy one. Also, pregnant people tend to wear the baby on board badge that you get for free. Those of you who don't live in London, you get a free badge from Transport for London that says baby on board. Pretty much everyone wears it. That is to prevent these incidents.
See, I'm a 55-year-old man. The issue there is on me, whereas the issue there is on the person who... But here's my question to you. Here's a serious ethical social dilemma. If you looked at someone and you thought they could be pregnant, you're not sure. Is it worse to give them your seat because you think they could be, or to not offer your seat because you think it would be insulting if they're not?
Well, obviously, I have some lived experience of this, so that's going to bias my answer. I just think people who think they deserve a seat normally give off that energy, even if it's not with the badge. Like, if someone's pregnant, they kind of look a bit put upon and a bit like, why is no one offering me a seat? So I'd say read the room, Gary. Or, and this may be why you got offered a seat, if in doubt, I just err on the side of giving up my seat, because generally speaking, other than my height and occasional dodgy back, like I can stand on the tube and I sit a lot of my day. So generally speaking, if in doubt, I just offer someone a seat. The thing I want to know from listeners though is like, at what age or suspected age do you start giving your seat up to people? Because the other thing is people who've got a lot of bags, people with kids, generally just if someone looks like they've got more, if it's a bit more stressful, their day's looking a bit more full on than mine, I just give them a seat.
I have, well, it's mistaken identity. It's not a public transport one, but it is, it does speak to that, like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. When my family came to visit me in Chicago, I took them to see the Chicago Bulls play. I was standing outside waiting for them to come out of the stadium. We were all in the stadium, but we'd gone to the loo or whatever, and we were all separated. And this woman came past and gave me a little bag. You know, I was distracted. She gave me a bag. I said, thank you. She'd already walked off. Then, about 5 minutes later, she came back and she said, you're not homeless, are you? And she took the bag back. And I was like, wow. Fuck you. Like, what's that? Reparations? What is that? Like, give me the bag. Don't give me the bag.
Look in the bag? What was in the bag?
I didn't. I was kind of, it all happened in such a sort of weird way. I was like, this woman was just walking around giving out bags. I never even got to, there might have been some cool shit in there.
You're not homeless, are you? What I want to know is, what she handed you the bag and then she walked off and then something happened in her mind and she came back and was like, so maybe it was like her brain was, you know, the meme where it's like all the maths equations going out. She's like, wait, he looked, but then actually, I don't know that he was homeless. He didn't have a sign. And then she was like, came back. She was like, I'm going back.
But that's the weird, you can't see that someone is homeless unless it's really late at night and they're lying on the ground. Like, I mean, there are moments.
Or if they have a sign.
Yeah, I'm standing up. I'm not, so it's a judgment call. We'll leave aside for the moment what judgment she made about why I was homeless, apart from I'm black. It's the coming back and then taking the bag. I'm like, look, make the mistake, but then move on, lady.
Yeah, you've made a call. You thought he looked homeless. You gave him a bag of stuff. Now you're revisiting the call. You just got to commit to the bit now. You got to walk off.
Exactly.
It's way more awkward. Yeah, so I mean, I guess, what is there a moral to this? Don't make assumptions about people on the street. Don't offer Gary your seat. If you see Gary on public transport, don't offer him your seat, even if he looks particularly tired or he's got bags. Like, he's going to take it as an insult. He might kick off.
I think the lesson is, because that woman did nothing. That woman did nothing wrong. She just she hurt my pride a little bit. But so my thing is, commit to the bit. And less is more. Get up. You think someone's pregnant? Get up. Offer them your seat. Don't point at their stomach. If people do take the homeless bag, don't take it back. It's rude.
Do you want to know what was in that bag, though?
Yeah. Isn't there that phrase, like, I got my bag?
Secure the bag is the phrase.
Secure the bag. Well,
Not I got my bag. Although I do like I got my bag. We've got some social media chat. I can't speak. I got my bag. Rachel Shabby on X got in touch and said, do yourselves a favour and tune into the Over Under pod with Gary Young and Carys and Gary. It's the politics podcast you need now more than ever. And while so much of the rest is garbage. Thanks, Rachel. And then Jim Reginald replied saying, the best. I put all else aside. Lay down and listen. Always revelatory. That's so nice.
Oh, love Jim and Rachel. You can find us all over socials, be it Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, or X, and I think Blue Sky now.
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky now.
Are you?
It. Yeah, I'm out here. I haven't actually really posted, but I'm there lurking. It's a lot of people who seem to be left-wing in like libraries.
Oh, wow. You find us at over_pod_.
Another shout out to the people who signed up to Patreon this week. This week's new sign-ups are Scott, Anna, Christina, Yam, Tom, Claire, Keone, and I'm really sorry, Melchiorson. Thank you so much to all of you. I'm really sorry if I mangled your name. It means so much that so many of you support the podcast.
We have 347 paying Patreon supporters, and we want to thank all of you who've helped to keep this podcast going. We have a new target of 400 Patreon supporters to reach by Christmas Day on 25th of December. Make our Christmas, please. Put your money where your ears are. Support us. If you like what we do, the only way that we can keep going is with your support. Packages start at just £5 a month. So if you want to keep the show going, access our weekly bonus episodes, the weekly newsletter, exclusive, fabulous Over Under WhatsApp community, very active WhatsApp community. Search Over the Top, Under the Radar on Patreon, and please back us.
My over the top, it's not Liz Kendall. It's Labour's policy white paper, Get Britain Working, which probably most people have seen some headlines. Maybe if you watch the political talk shows, you saw Liz Kendall, who's Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. She did the Sunday media round. Keir Starmer wrote a charming piece for the Mail on Sunday about the importance of work. There are 11 million people in the UK who are not in paid work. And of those people, there are 1.5 million people who are unemployed. I think we all know what that means. And then the rest, the sort of 9 million odd left, are economically inactive. And so Liz Kendall and the government's proposals to get Britain working are focused on, of those people, the people who are in receipt of disability benefits or on some sort of long-term sick leave so that they can't be in the workforce, and also young people who are not in education or training. The acronym for that is NEETs. I think the crux of the thing that annoys me is Labour yet again not understanding that if you accept the terms of debate as the right set them out, this isn't an argument you can win. So as much as lobby journalists have been quick to tell us that Labour are striking a different tone, they're deliberately being more compassionate to people who are on benefits or out of work, ultimately the policy is still, if young people don't accept employment or training opportunities, they're going to have their benefits sanctioned or cut. And I guess there's sort of two things about that. I think the first is I don't believe in, nor have I ever encountered anyone who is lazy and work shy and just like sitting on benefits because they want a free payday. Part of the reason for that is that benefits are not a lot of money. And then also, if we actually look at the welfare bill, which people are so obsessed with, and, you know, a lot of the thing that I hate about this debate is that people just pick some big numbers and start parroting them and being like, well, it's just such a big number. It's so terrifying, isn't it? All the people, you know, not working. More than half of the welfare bill, so, you know, we're talking like about 265, 66 billion, more than half of that goes to pensioners and state pensions. We never talk about that. We never touch that. 37% of people receiving universal credit, which is a benefit that does get a lot of energy, are people on unemployment. So 37% of people receiving one of the benefits that apparently means that they're work shy are in work, but they are being employed by people who pay them so little that we have to top up their wages. And I guess the final bit of the benefits bill that I think Labour should be talking about, but isn't, is the housing benefit bill. Again, that's like 14 billion, probably a bit more, which is a wealth transfer essentially to private landlords. People's housing costs are higher than what they can meet. And so we give them money to help to cover their rent. And I just think that whilst it is a tragedy for young people who are at home, they're not working, they're not studying, and especially, if they have mental health problems or physical health problems that mean that they can't get pathways into work or study, we obviously need to be helping and supporting them. Government data does support the idea there are more people who want a job than are unemployed. So, 1.9 million people say they want a job. There are 1.5 million people unemployed. There are hundreds of thousands, if not more, people who can't access labour markets, maybe have needs that can't be accommodated by employers. These things are all important, but they aren't costing as much as the media and politicians suggest. And they aren't the cornerstone of what is making the benefits bill big and what we need to do to drive economic growth. So yeah, I'm just a bit over it. And I think it's a bit disappointing to see Labour just playing into right-wing tropes around welfare.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I mean, it's not good that they're doing it, but it's a good over the top, because I've seen this with some concern. Liz Kendall, who with the backing of basically the entire New Labour machine couldn't get anywhere in her race against Corbyn. She's accepting a whole load of right-wing welfare there.
Well, fun fact, Morgan McSweeney, now Chief of Staff, was her campaign manager.
Oh, really? So he's really good at his job then. They punch down regularly. I'm a socialist. And in a socialist society, you would want everyone who can be to be somewhat productive. We have to change what we mean by productive. That could be art, and to contribute what they can. And that I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think that most people, for their lives to have value, need to feel that they are contributing something and are doing something. But that something can be caring for an elderly person.
A huge chunk of people who are economically inactive are caring, either for elderly people, children, loved ones. Compared to other OECD countries, it looks like we've got more people who are still on long-term sick and haven't gone back to work since COVID. But in a lot of other countries, there was a huge growth in people on long-term sick, and the rate of return to the workplace is a bit lower in the UK. Again, a bit, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, but there's an OBR paper on their website, Office of Budget Responsibility, that suggests that might be about the cost of childcare and dynamics around carers in our country. So yeah, I think it is worth pointing out that economically inactive does not mean people aren't working every day, or they're not being productive, or they're not contributing to society.
And the one thing I would add is particularly the way that it stigmatizes people with disabilities.
Yeah, the thing that kind of jumped out to me when I was reading up on this is that Joseph Rowntree Foundation said that a quarter of adults who are on health-related universal credit or employment support allowance, a quarter of them have used a food bank in the last year, and a third say that they're not able to keep their house warm. So people in receipt of disability benefits, because there are a lot of costs associated with having a disability, are really at the hard edge of this and are facing an increased risk of poverty. And yet again, they're the people that we're punching down on. So yeah. What's your under the radar?
There's a petition afoot. And this is one of those stories where I went backwards and forwards on this, because in some worlds, this is all they're talking about. But I get the feeling that in other worlds, it hasn't really landed. It's landing in the mainstream in quite a big way. So excuse me, listeners, if you're like, well, that's not under the radar. But this is...
what's the petition? What's the petition?
The petition is basically to have a do-over, to have a general election and get Keir Starmer out. Which you think, didn't we just have an election?
Wait, it's a petition for a general election?
Petition saying Keir Starmer's got to go. It was put up by a pub landlord from the West Midlands. He voted Tory. He says, which is true, he's broken a lot of his campaign promises. What he can't say is this is not what we voted for because he didn't vote for him. But this petition has been endorsed by our good friend Elon Musk, by Nigel Farage. It has 2.5 million signatories. It has pushed its way into the sort of, I don't know if it's precisely these shows, but the morning shows, Good Morning Britain, things like that. And it's become this kind of standard bearer of a certain kind of right-wing Brit, mostly English, but not exclusively, that like, we're calling it. We need a do-over. Starmer said, yeah, that's not the way it works. And I think, he's right. It's not the way it works. Actually, we don't just do petitions. And 2.5 million, it might be more people than you expected to sign it, but like, it's still not even close to what the Tories actually got. And they did really bad. But first of all, it does speak to a weakness in Labour, which is that this was a Loveless landslide. Less people voted for Starmer's Labour than Corbyn, even when Corbyn went down in flames. This is not an argument in this moment I'm making about Corbyn, but it's about the thinness of the mandate that Labour has, and therefore its need to actually build its legitimacy. So I do think that there is a legitimacy problem, even if it's not that the way that our electoral system is set up, you can have a massive majority with as few votes as they have. It's incredibly distorted. The second issue, I think, and it does speak to a weakness among Liberals, is the people who are saying, well, that's not how this works. A lot of them are the same people who absolutely vociferously campaigned for a second referendum on Brexit and were like, well, they got it wrong, so we're going to do it again. I have to confess, right towards the end, I reluctantly did back a second referendum because my feeling was the British state was incapable of fight. Do you remember when there were all those votes and you couldn't get a majority for anything? And I was like, look, this is hopeless. Maybe we do need a do-over. But I thought in principle, it was a real problem. We've already had a vote. The people who backed the second referendum, particularly the kind of fundamentalists, kind of set us up a little bit for a situation like this. And the third is that it does speak to a kind of grain of disquiet that I have about where this all might go. If we take the summer and the violence against asylum seekers, these are not the same people. I'm not saying that. But if we take what happened in the summer and we take this idea that like, right, these people have got to get out, you can just see, I think, the green shoots of quite a nasty little place that we might get into about where power should be and what are we going to do about it. I can see them building something on the back of this. And I saw it in America a few times, particularly with Obama, where it's like, yeah, he might have won an election, but we are not going to consent to their victory. This is only a small thing. But I think after the summer, it's a small thing that's connected, not deliberately, but in a mood to a bigger thing, which is delegitimizing what democracy we have. Did you know about the petition?
I've seen headlines that mention a petition. I did used to work for an organisation where we routinely ask people to sign petitions. So I can say 2 million isn't nothing for a petition in the UK, assuming everyone who signed it lives actually in the UK. But no, it had gone under my radar, but I'd seen some headlines. I think maybe Kemi Badenoch had mentioned the petition at PMQs. So I knew there was a petition. It wasn't a We Love Keir Starmer petition, which I can't imagine getting 2 million signatures, but maybe I'm wrong, It's an interesting one about the delegitimizing and the sort of organized right-wing delegitimizing of someone who isn't that left-wing. That's the bit that I find a bit confusing about it. With Obama or with other people who were a bit more lefty, there's a sense of some of it was just racist, but some of it was he's going to bring in socialized healthcare. There are going to be death panels. And it does seem a little bit funny when other than asking farmers to pay some inheritance tax, he hasn't done anything that radical to be responding to. I'm with you in that it does feel a little bit of sore losing, which we saw a huge amount of in the aftermath of the Brexit referendum. So sore loser-ish, weird energy so soon after an election. But I think what you said that I agree with is that is it also tapping into an undercurrent of discontent and maybe the UK's shortest political honeymoon period. This long after the 97 New Labour landslide, would you have found 2 million people willing to sign up? I mean, the internet wasn't in the state it is now, but like, would you have had the same sentiment against like Tony Blair and New Labour? Like, it feels like, I mean, just looking at his poll numbers, it does feel like the shine's worn off pretty quickly.
Yeah, nothing left wing has happened. But actually, that speaks to the vulnerability that all the things that you were just talking about and the punching down and all that, it doesn't actually win over these people. But it does create a mood because this guy, at the center of his grievance is this notion he's talking Britain down. It's all doom and gloom. He's freaking us out. He's made it all sound scary. It is rooted in, first of all, a kind of right-wing person who doesn't agree with the policies. Also, that everything's gone to shit and there is no sense of hope coming out of this government at all. It's depressing. And that depression doesn't help us in the progressive movement build the hope for a better future. It's all going the other way.
Yeah, it's like they're going to come at you whatever you do. So like, you may as well be doing something worthwhile, right? You may as well be using the power that you've got to make real change, because they're going to poke at you either way. And there are a number of op-eds in the Mail on Sunday talking about how you used to break rocks when you were 14 for money. It's Keir Starmer's first job. It's gonna change their minds about you. Yeah, I'm not going to sign the petition though.
You surprised me.
Gary, we're going to talk about your books. There are two that I have in mind. Dispatches from the Diaspora, that came out pretty recently, and then the other from a couple of years ago, Another Day in the Death of America. And yeah, I wanted to talk about the inspiration behind both of them.
Yeah, so the inspiration behind Dispatches from the Diaspora, which is a collection of pieces from my journalistic career, and that covers everything from my reporting of the first election in South Africa in 1994, where I followed Mandela around, weirdly managed to stumble into his entourage, to Hurricane Katrina, interview with Stormzy, Black Lives Matter, interview with Angela Davis.
And most importantly, you got drunk with Maya Angelou, and you write about that in the book, which is, I mean, come on. And then Another Day in the Death of America. It's funny, it's a similar device, but it's really, I don't know if you call it a polemic, but it's much more, it takes one issue, which a lot of us read about or hear about, which is gun crime in America, and it looks at the edges of the different ways that gun crime in America impacts people.
For that one, I took one day at random and then looked at all of the kids who had been shot dead that day in America. It's
not, an easy read, but it is, I think it does really honour the children and their families. And we've got a special offer today for the Over the Top, Under the Radar listeners. So if you want to gift one of Gary's books, then you can get 30% off right now, thanks to Faber. If you go to faber.co.uk/author/Gary-Young. And you have a special code, podcast30, that you just use at checkout, and you'll get 30% off your books, which is a very good deal.
So that's podcast30 for 30% off. faber.co.uk/author/Gary-Young. Remember, Young's got an E. A thoughtful gift that won't break the bank. What's not to love?
My under the radar is the Irish election.
Why bother with an election? Why don't they just have a petition?
They might have one of those two. We don't know. Main backstory is election's been called. It's been a 2-week campaign. People might remember the last election in 2020 was where Sinn Féin had a huge breakout success, won the second highest number of TDs. They weren't even standing in every constituency, but like had this big shock victory. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, Sinn Féin, could there be United Ireland? Very, very dramatic. This time, Sinn Féin is standing more candidates. The current government is Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, and the Green Party. So the two sort of centrist right-wing parties that tend to alternate power, teamed together, refused to do a deal with Sinn Féin. They've said they won't do a deal with Sinn Féin this time either, with the Green MPs to form an election. So I think interesting things about the Irish election. One is that Sinn Féin, who were on this real high in 2020, Mary Lou McDonald, who's the kind of charismatic leader, was seen as the Taoiseach in waiting. And, you know, Sinn Féin had this more left-wing agenda. When they stood in 2020, people I spoke to say, you know, they're still centre-left, but on things like migration, they wouldn't say that they've got very left-wing politics. So I think interesting thing is Sinn Féin, who came out of the last election on a real high, have seen a massive decline in their poll numbers. The current Taoiseach had a bit of a Gordon Brown, Gillian Duffy moment where he had a sort of confrontation with a care worker who said afterwards that she was sort of in floods of tears. And then the other thing, which is very different to our politics and to a lot of the politics we're seeing in like Western democracies, is there isn't a single party for the far right, anti-migrant, fascisty vote. There isn't like a Nigel Farage or Donald Trump. So what you see instead is lots of left-wing parties or parties of the left, Sinn Féin, depending on what you think. There's a Green Party, there's a Labour Party, there's a Social Democratic Party, there's a People Over Profit Party. And then on the right, there's this sort of national alliance. But what you tend to get is these independent candidates that represent the far right. And then, you know, you've got like the National Party, Ireland First, Irish People. The reason I think that's interesting and relevant is that A, I think that so far that's meant the far right have been less powerful. But B, I think it has seen then far right sentiment creeping into other parties. So I don't know if people remember, but we're now on the anniversary of the Dublin riots, which were not dissimilar to the unrest we saw in August of this year. 3 young children were killed, and there was a huge swell in anti-immigrant sentiment and a lot of misinformation online about why the children had been killed and that basically immigrants and asylum seekers were to blame, and there were riots in Dublin. So yeah, it's a big election. It's an important election. I think the riots and the way that immigration got pushed onto the agenda is like part of a broader trend that we're seeing in lots of places. And then one thing I think is different in Ireland that is really great is that housing is a huge, huge issue. That's not great. Huge issues with homelessness and like sky high rents. But all of the parties are competing on how many homes they're going to build. And all of them believe that social housing is part of the solution. That's my kind of potted summary of what's going on in Ireland. I'm sure those listening who live in Ireland, are Irish, might have other thoughts. Please write in and tell us. But yeah, I think it's a weird one to not be talking about, given the relationship we have with Ireland. And it's probably not likely because of coalition politics. But there is a world in which you could have the Irish Taoiseach, equivalent of Prime Minister, could be from Sinn Féin, and then we'd have a First Minister in Northern Ireland who was also from Sinn Féin, which would be historic. Don't think it's likely to happen, but it could happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's generally interesting, I think, the way that Britain doesn't relate to Ireland. Do you know what I mean? Given how long the war went on, given that there's still 6 counties that Britain took and won't return, and that, you know, if there's a referendum, I assume that those 6 counties would vote to stay. I don't know. And they call it Ulster, but it's not Ulster because Ulster is 9 counties and Britain only kept the 6 counties that would have a pro-British majority in and so on. So the degree of I'm always intrigued by the degree of ignorance that there is towards Ireland, given the amount of violence, military control and resources that the country poured in over the years to actually control the place. It's kind of like, would you not want to know what you're stealing? Would you not want to know more about it? Because I go quite a lot, I've seen, first of all, and I mentioned this in an earlier podcast, the kind of rise of the right in Ireland, which is a kind of weird thing for Ireland of all places to rise up around immigration, given how many more people there are who are Irish, who live outside of Ireland or who are eligible for Irish citizenship, who live outside of Ireland rather than inside of Ireland. It's still a migrant country. I don't think there is anyone on the island of Ireland who doesn't have quite immediate connections to someone who is an immigrant. And as I said on an earlier podcast, Ireland has less people in it now than it did before the famine. I don't think there was any other Western country that could say that there are still less people in it than there were in the kind of mid-19th century. And so when they run on campaigns saying Ireland is full, it's like, Well, it's not, is it? Don't be silly. And I know or I hear from family members that Sinn Féin, they got their eye on the prize, that they could be a party of government. The only reason that they're probably not a party of government is they didn't stand enough candidates at the last election because they surprised themselves. And they've started talking out of both sides of their mouth.
This is exactly what my Irish friend said about them, talking out of both sides of their mouth in immigration.
And kind of legitimizing, legitimate concerns of the working class kind of talk, as opposed to, listen, this is not who we are. There is an argument, and if you can't make it in Ireland, you can't make it, about the benefits of migration, the need for order. We could talk about kind of order and it being orderly and, safe. My experience of being in Ireland as a black person, it used to be that you were kind of somewhat anomalous, a bit of a curiosity. Johnny, what you know? This man's come all the way from Africa for a pint of Guinness and you'll not be serving him. I remember somebody actually saying that about me while I was in a pub waiting for a drink. I'd come from Africa for a pint of Guinness. Will you serve this man? Whereas 15, 20 years after that experience, someone shouted the M-bomb at me out of a kind of passing van. I'm not saying that, you walk around Ireland and, you're going to get attacked straight away, but things have changed. And as for the election, I hope that whatever cynicism there is about the main parties, that they don't vote for the worst parties. Irish politics are very interesting because an awful lot of it, when I ask local people there about, well, what's the difference between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil? It all goes back to kind of 1921 or 1916. Together, they're like, there was that party in Mexico called the Party of Institutional Revolution. And that's how I think of them both, as being born out of this context that happened 100 years ago. And I think one is more for the farmers. The one is understood to be more for the rich, but, quite a lot of the farmers are rich. And they take up a lot of space between them. And then there are these Sinn Féin, which has always been there, but was never really particularly kind of strong in the South. And then, Labour and Green and so on. I don't know who to root for, but I'm rooting against the status quo in a good way. There is rooting against the status quo. You end up with Trump.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the really interesting difference in Ireland, right? There isn't this one lightning rod party for disaffection, although we will see what happens with the quote unquote independents who tend to be far right. One of the people I spoke to prepare for this works for an organisation called Uplift, which is a sort of progressive campaign group in Ireland. And they did a really interesting paper about vacant and empty homes in Ireland, to your point about Ireland being full and just how much of the housing stock is derelict, holiday homes that no one's using. And I think the interesting thing is there are these similarities in our politics with Ireland, but also really stark differences. But one of the things that the person from Uplift said, she was like, the real work for activists begins once the programme for government is agreed, because unlike in the UK where, we had our vote, Keir Starmer won, huge majority, there's nothing for us to do, but he's sort of got a winner takes all mandate. Once the votes are counted and we know how many TDs everyone's got, it's then who can do what deal and what are they promising. I think it will be interesting to see who prevails and what prevails. Okay, Gary. So lots going on at the moment. Tell me, what do you think has been over the top in the news?
I want to start, because we record on a Thursday, by wishing a very happy Thanksgiving to all of those in the United States, or all of those Americans, if you celebrate elsewhere, for your Thanksgiving. And this, over the top, is Thanksgiving related. Because it's Thanksgiving in America, that makes tomorrow Black Friday. Now, Black Friday, it is a, national civic thing. It is also a commercial thing. And that is what I find annoying. Not for the Americans, because you have Thanksgiving and then Friday is the first day after Thanksgiving. It's a big shopping day, lots of reductions and so on and so forth. But why do we have Black Friday? We are sold Black Friday as an idea. Where did that come from? And why do we need it? Black Friday is related. It's like having Boxing Day in Iran. Do you know what I mean? When most people aren't celebrating Christmas. It's an entire US import. It came in more or less through the online world, but now, like, I think Aldi were the first to kind of market at a certain point, and now we all do it, or at least it's in all of our lives. We don't need more reasons to shop, and we don't need more consumables. So I've got to be in my bonnet, and I think it's not part of the regular story world of being over the top, but it's a thing that has become a phenomenon in the country. I think we've gone over the top with it. I would like to hear less about Black Friday. In the words of the detractors of the Black Lives Matter movement, all Fridays matter, not just Black Friday.
So obviously the short answer to why do we all celebrate Black Friday is capitalism. It's globalizing nature and desire to make us all buy stuff. I'm with you on that. It is part of this bigger trend of like everything seasonal gets branded. For me, the worst is Amazon Prime Day because it's a holiday associated with one company. And I mean, a terrible one at that. However, Gary, I bloody love a bargain. So it's hard for me, as much as I believe that, you know, our society is an unjust one. I think that there's a lot of pressure to consume and to buy. Something in me loves saving money and like getting a deal. And I would be a liar if I pretended I had not already partaken in Black Friday, because part of the thing with the Black Friday is it actually begins way before the Friday. I think the history is presumably you would have been in America for this when we shopped less online, was like a bit like the Boxing Day sales, right? It's like been a big public holiday. The next day you're all queuing outside shops, and it makes sense because like they discount a TV, but then you're going to buy loads of other crap because you're in the shop. But I think now it's just a sort of like a sale, an extended sale period. Where I'm with you is I think a lot of it is scams. I'm not sure how much money we're actually saving. It's scammy, but I'm trying to buy things that I need, that I've been delaying. Basically, I've been delaying buying these hoop earrings from this shop because I was like, I think the shop does a Black Friday sale. Basically, I have a problem. I don't know that the listeners need to know this. I have a problem in that I like to wear gold hoop earrings and I lose them all the time. And then I look like a pirate, to quote someone I dated. And then obviously you can't really wear mismatched hoops. And then I'm a bit cheap about it. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to be replacing. I'm just losing them all the time. Anyway, as you know, I went on holiday to Italy in September. My latest set of hoops were a casualty to the sea, which I've learned from that. Okay, no one write in. I'm not going to go swimming in like choppy seas with my hoops in again. And do you know what, Gary? Actually, I do feel good about this. So that was in September, and I was like, I have no matching hoops. So I've had bare ears until November because I knew that the jewelry shop that I wanted to get the earrings from did a Black Friday sale. So I went for 2 months without earrings in order to get this discount.
I don't know what to say. It's quite rare that I'm speechless. I'm glad for you and your earrings. And, if the men you are dating are calling you a pirate, I mean, I'm assuming that is affectionate in some
We're no
way.
longer dating, so I think it was just a word associate. I think he saw one gold hoop earring, and I mean, who can blame him? It's piratey, isn't it?
I'm here for you.
Thanks, friend. But you're not here for me buying earrings, waiting 2 months. I don't think that's overconsumption. I think that's smart consumption.
Look, I'm just going to own it. I'm a pretty styleless man.
Gary.
It's true.
He of the beanie.
And when I hear it a lot because I've got an 11-year-old daughter, but I need it. And I'm like, do you need it? That it's a reflex, which is why I can hear myself doing it. I can hear the Caribbean father, actually, not that I had one present in the house, but the Caribbean father shopsing their teeth and moaning because they want to watch the cricket. That's what I hear. Thanks for listening to Over the Top, Under the Radar. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'd like to thank Faber for supporting this episode.
If you want to support the show, you can find us by searching Over the Top, Under the Radar on the Patreon website.
You can sign up to our newsletter at overunderpod.com.
You can connect with us on social media at over_under_pod_.